The reason it is so powerful is because a lien generally will cloud the title of the property. So what does that mean? That actually means that the property cannot be sold, or the funds that you did to make improve that project. So if you improve that property for $30,000, that has to be put in an escrow before anything is sold.
Hello and welcome back. Today we have a special guest, Ariela Wagner, an expert from SunRay Construction Solutions, who specializes in construction lien rights. Thank you, Ariela, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
To start, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this industry?
Absolutely. So SunRay Construction Solutions secures about $10 billion a year in lien rights. We work with general contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers. We have an extraordinary online software that helps them select the correct documents and secures their money so that they get paid.
All right. So the software, you guys work with all states, right? Because I feel like a lot of people don't realize when we are talking about lien rights, every single state is different. And it's hard to find an expert that would work in all states.
Yeah, so you're 100% correct. Every state is different. Every state has a different name for their document. Every single state has a different time frame. And it also depends on where you are on the payment food chain. So general contractors may have very specific documents that they need to record versus subcontractors that need to secure their lien or bond claim rights versus equipment lessors, for example, in Louisiana, who have to send a specific notice, unlike a subcontractor or supplier in Louisiana. So there are very specific rules for each and every state.
I think for a lot of people who are watching us, maybe we should talk about a brief overview of what construction lien rights are and why they're important in the first place.
Absolutely. So a construction lien is one of the most powerful collection tools you have in your arsenal in the construction industry if used correctly. We believe in really having a coherent process in your company. First and foremost, you have to have a contract in place. That would be number one. Number two, if you are not in privity, which means if you are not hired directly by the owner of the property in about 35 states, you're required to send some type of a preliminary notice. So, for example, in Florida, it's called a notice to owner / notice to contractor, and it must be sent by the 40th day from first furnishing labor and material, unless it's specially fabricated material. Then you have to send your notice as soon as you start working on the project. Versus California, you send something called a preliminary notice, and that must be sent 20 days from first furnishing labor or material. So again, depending on where you are in the food chain, if you're not working directly for the owner of the property, you want to send these preliminary notices to secure your lien rights. The reason that is so powerful is it not only says, hi, Mr. Owner, hi, Mr. General Contractor, I'm on the property and I'm improving the property for whatever it might be, painting the project, drywall, electrical, it doesn't matter. Whatever they're doing to make an improvement to the property, they're securing their lien rights. So it's a prerequisite. And then the second step, if they're not paid, again, in each state, there are time frames in which they have to lien the property. So, for example, in Florida, it's 90 days from last furnishing labor and material on the project to lien the property. Now, the reason it is so powerful is because a lien generally will cloud the title of the property. So what does that mean? That actually means that the property cannot be sold, or the funds that you did to make improve that project. So if you improve that property for $30,000, that has to be put in an escrow before anything is sold. So it's a very powerful tool. I mean, we've had situations where you lien a property and the lender will not continue financing it, and the whole project can come to a complete halt. That is the power of a lien.
That is so crazy. I was just talking to Alex, our friend from construction law firm, and we were just talking, accounting in general and law in general and everything that is connected to it seems to be so complicated and boring for a lot of people, especially in construction, because I feel like construction people are so um passionate and excited about creating, right? So when somebody's talking to them numbers or about the law in general, you would think that I have no idea what all this means. I don't want to get into it, but that is how you get in trouble. If you are not getting paid and you haven't secured all those little things that you got to do, and you had no idea you had to have contracts in place, you had no idea what to write in those contracts, you had no idea to send those notices, you're out of luck. You have to educate yourself on law, on accounting, on the numbers and words and regulations and what you have to have in place. I agree that is very important. Would you mind speaking more about like the key steps involved?
Absolutely.
Um you
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that what you did, you hit the nail on the head. You could be the most incredible subcontractor on the planet, incredible with drywall. You know exactly what to do. You have an incredible team, but how do you get paid? How do you ensure that you are going to get paid from the general contractor? Or if you're a sub to a general contractor, how do you ensure that you get paid? The first part of it is very simple. We like to take the complication out of it. First, a project information sheet. Very simple. Who do you have an agreement with, whether it is oral or written? So, are you working for the subcontractor who's working for the general contractor? It's a very simple step. So, then all you have to do is who is my customer on the payment food chain? Number two, when was my first day on the job? What is my contract amount? What is the job address in which I'm improving the project? In some states, it matters. Are you working on residential or are you working on commercial? In fact, are you working on a public or a federal project? Because it matters which document is sent. And again, the time frame for either the first document, which is your preliminary notice, your second document, the lien or an intent to lien in some states like Colorado, Oklahoma, or your claim against a bond. So that's for your public projects and your federal projects. I want to have a little disclaimer there that even on some major private projects, those two are bonded. We're going to talk about lien rights because we could talk about liens and bond claims probably for hours. The project information sheet, like I said, has 10 really critical pieces of information. Your first day on the job, your job address, who hired you. And again, if you are not working directly for the prime contractor who's hired by the owner, we want to know that. Why? Because most importantly, and you know this, the money trickles down, trickles from the owner to the general contractor, to the sub, to the suppliers. So knowing who's on the food chain is very important. And it's one simple question. When you ask your customer, who are you hired by? And that's, are you hired by the general contractors, hired by the owner? And it's really that simple. So filling in that project information form, and then basically SunRay, you go into the SunRay application and you fill that in, and it helps guide you through the process. And it's that simple. We don't get into the complication of legalities of foreclosures and suit on bonds. We leave that up to the experts.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that software that you have. Is that something that the construction business owners can just use, or do they need to get your help in using it, or how does it all work?
I think that contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers may need a little assistance in onboarding. Again, it's really complicated when you're so fearful. You're working in a completely different side of your brain. You're working in construction using your hands, and then you go into the software part of it, and you're like, "Oh my goodness gracious, what am I supposed to enter here?" So there's a little bit of onboarding and training. And what we also do at SunRay, which is really critical, something I started 18 years ago, is education. I love platforms like yours because it's all about educating customers and educating them correctly, not having someone who's read a book and then suddenly becomes an expert on the subject matter. We actually have attorneys, we have credit professionals who've been in the industry for 15 plus years, and accountants that are construction focused, educating our customers with webinars and seminars.
That is valuable because it sounds like there's a lot of room for errors if not done properly. Are there
Yeah.
any common mistakes that you see contractors make when they come to you? They're like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in trouble. I don't know what's happening.
Yes, I actually see this a lot with smaller companies, and it's exactly what you said in the beginning of this episode. What happens a lot with the subcontractors is they miss their deadlines to send their preliminary notices to secure their money. So, like I said, step one would be filling out that project information sheet to know everything that's going on your project, your first day, etc., your contract amount, all those points we discussed before. What happens is they come to SunRay too late. So if you're a subcontractor, again, not working directly for the owner of a property, you want to make sure that you send your notices as soon as you start working on the project. And you know what happens all the time? And I don't blame subcontractors. They have a great relationship. They have a great relationship with the sub they're working with. They have a great relationship with the general contractor, or they have they're scared they're going to lose the project if they send a preliminary notice. It is one of the most common business practices in the construction industry. Those that don't send their notices get paid or could get paid last because the GCs won't know that you're on the project. And if they do, they're focused on the other part of it, which is, oh, wait a second, Blue Construction Drywall sent a notice, we need to get a waiver and release from this company. So they're on that payment list, if you will. So I think the biggest mistake I see for subcontractors and contractors, because they miss their lien deadlines, is, oh, they're going to pay. They're going to pay. Well, you have very specific deadlines that you can't miss. And so unfortunately, that's number one. The second one I see is poor job information. Like I said, job address, a correct and accurate job address.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Man, that's certainly important to keep in mind. Now, what about the process of actually enforcing a construction lien? Like once it's filed, what steps are there to be taken to ensure it's actually upheld and payment is received?
So about 65 to 70% of the projects, once a property is liened, they're paid. Sometimes what happens is that other projects they would be paid, but the contractors, subcontractors, or suppliers, equipment lessors, they don't follow up in aggressive collections manner on the lien themselves. Then what could happen is if they have followed all those steps, they've liened the property, they're not getting anywhere. They filed the lien, they sent an additional demand that we're going to foreclose. Then it goes to the attorney. And the attorneys will most likely, their first step, which would be again to send a demand letter, and then they'll foreclose on the property. And that too has a timeline. In most states, you can't renew a lien. Most states, not all, but most states you can. So in Florida, for example, you have 1 year to foreclose on the property. There are a few exceptions there too, but you have 1 year to foreclose. You can't relien it. And generally speaking, if you have a really good internal process with collections, really after 10 business days, if you're not getting anywhere, then you want to speak with your attorney.
Yeah, that's important. Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you think is important for contractors to know about construction lien rights, or maybe how to minimize the likelihood of having to resort to enforcing a lien through those legal means?
I think the most important thing is to take a day in your entire business week, sit down with your bookkeeper. And if you don't have one, or if you have a large company, sit down and make sure you have an internal process for best collection practices in your company. We have a wealth of information online, but the one thing I see time and time again is inconsistencies inside of companies sending some notices, not sending notices, and not developing an internal process. So your general contractors watching your last day on the job very, very carefully, because again, time can slip away. So making sure, even if it's a biweekly process, seeing your last day on the job, your subcontractors, suppliers, equipment lessors, anyone not working directly for the owner, making sure you have an internal process that with each and every project, you send your preliminary notices to secure your lien rights and let everyone know, hi, I'm on the project. And that's really what I would conclude with. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree. Internal processes are so important. You can avoid so much trouble if you just keep all of your documents organized, all of your numbers are tracked. That is the importance of constantly knowing your numbers, knowing who did I invoice, who paid me, did we send out all the documentation we need, did we receive all the documentation from people who work with us. All of those things are so important, and we have been helping a lot of our clients avoid those problems by just simply tracking every single project, what is going on with them, what the numbers are, who needs to be invoiced, sending the reminders, all that stuff. That is so important. I totally agree with you. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I will, for everyone watching, I will put the information on how to contact Ariela if you have any lien rights questions down in the description. If you guys want to learn more about what kind of contracts you need to have in place for your construction business, you got to check out my latest video when I spoke with Alex, the construction law expert. That was very valuable conversation as well. And as usual, you know what to do if you found this video helpful. Like, subscribe, and share. Thank you, Ariela.
Thank you so much. Have a fabulous and sunny day.
Thank you. See you guys on the other side.